Hincapie there as well, and Bobby Julie from Team Telecom. The sprinter Fred Rodriguez. Levi Leipheimer, of the 180 men left in the race now, is 155th and is seeking form for what he hopes will be a good start to next year, the season 2004. Right, well, we've been one day into the Pyrenees. We've gone to France. Now we're turning our back on France and going back into Spain for the rest of the day. The Pla de Beret, which is an ore category climb, a special category climb. The stepping stones are the Col d'Aspan, the Col de Peyresourde, the Col de Portillon. It's the Portillon which brings us back into Spain as we then continue up the ore category climb to the finish of the Pla de Beret. There they are, 3 first category climbs, 1 special category. I can tell you a breakaway establishing very early on. They reached the Aspan after 2 very fast hours of racing. 9 leaders led over the top by Johan Horrocks. 8 minutes 25 the gap ahead of the main field, and these 9 riders riding pretty consistently on the climb, while the peloton not overdoing it, riding as a big bunch, and only the absolute non-climbers placed in any sort of difficulty. So that was a good ride then for Johan Horrocks. 16 points for him, the Milanese rider. Jouffre riding very well this tour. He was second. Oza and Francisco Lara. So that was the situation on the Aspan. Then we went down the Aspan. We've gone up the Peyresourde. We can now take the action here on the Peyresourde. The gap, Bob, 8:25. It's just about the same. It went out to over 10 minutes, but it's come back now to about the same they had over the top of the Aspan.
Interestingly, the La Barca team, who doesn't have a rider in the breakaway, has been doing the brunt of the chasing so far. The highest placed rider in the break is Aitor Oso, but he's all the way in 16 plus minutes down. So Once also has Joaquin Rodriguez in the breakaway in case it should go out to a preposterous level and they didn't start chasing then. So interesting day so far still in the Pyrenees, second day in the mountains in the Vuelta a España, the Tour of Spain. Here's a group that's detached from the main body of the field on the Peyresourde. Most of the sprinters in that group, riders like Pataki, Furlan, some of the more speedy riders. The main brunt of our field, though, right there at the very top of your screen. Beautiful day for a bike race in the mountains of the Vuelta.
So unlike on the Aspan, the race now beginning to split up into 3 bunches here on the climb in pursuit of those 9 leaders. Julian Dean, 1 sprinter not in any group today, eliminated yesterday, 5 minutes off the main field, off the last man apart from himself. So sadly, Julian Dean, the sprinter, is out. We'll take a break, come back and join us on the Col de Peyresourde. And welcome back as we look here at the top of the Col de Peyresourde, taking us to 71 kilometres from the finish. The 9 riders in the lead, just going over the top here. Johan Horrocks is taking his second big win of the day. He won the Col d'Aspan, so he's off in search of that King of the Mountains jersey. And as they begin the descent, we now will await the arrival of the main field. But Paul, Horrocks has got 2 now. He's not far off that race lead.
Well, he certainly hasn't. He's in fact moved himself up to a 55-point total. The leader in that King of the Mountains classification right now is still Felix Cardenas, which is why we're seeing the team of La Barca coming to the front and set the tempo, because there are still 2 big, very important mountains to come. The next one after this will be the Col de Portillon, which is a first category climb. But if that breakaway were to survive, there's a special categorization for the final climb of the day, which is certainly an awful lot more points than a first category. There's 30 points at stake there. This is the second group. That's Richard Virenque dancing out of the pedals. He's used to dancing around through the Pyrenees. We've seen him very many times during the Tour de France ride so well. That looked like Hincapie as well in this group. This is the second group compared to the main field. The main field are right in front with all of the major stars. There's Eric Zabel looking fairly comfortable in what we would call the gruppetto. But the thing that always amazes me, Bob, about Eric Zabel is he always climbs better than any of the other sprinters.
The other sprinters are way down the road now. This group here will probably be able to reintegrate into the front after they go over the top of this climb, the Peyresourde. Just trying to survive to make it in the time limit, so Eric Zabel probably won't have another chance at a stage until Monday when we get out of the mountains. 3 very, very hard days in the Pyrenees.
Richard Virenque there, losing ground, saying at the start this morning that he was in fact feeling very tired. So I think mentally and physically he's a bit turned off at this stage of a long career of the season. He's 6 times a winner, don't forget now, of the King of the Mountains in the Tour de France. And don't forget, we'll be with you again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time until 4:30. 90 minutes of same-day coverage of the Vuelta Espana. It's a real tough day tomorrow. We go back into Andorra. Well, not back. Our first visit to the Principality in this year's Tour of Spain. We crossed the mountains again, 174.8 kilometres. A very, very tough, arguably the toughest of the 3 days we're spending in the Pyrenees. There's Richard Virenque there, trying now to make amends and quickly cross the gap from what is the second part of the peloton. It's split into 3 very definite groups right now as they still climb towards the summit. But remember, the leaders have gone over and the clock is running. They had 8:25, these 9 leaders on top of the Espana. It was up to 10:17 as they started the Peyresourde, and the clock is still running and awaiting their arrival now at the top of the Peyresourde. They're already streaking down the other side, heading into Luchon, before they'll start to climb out of Luchon via the Col de Portillon, which will cross them back from France into Spain. There's some details of the Col de Peyresourde, 1,570 metres, 10 kilometres is its distance, 6 miles, steady gradient with its max gradient of 1 in 10 or 10%. It looks as though Richard Virenque, Paul, has found his legs. He can't take the ignominy of being left behind by a bunch of non-climbers, surely.
Well, what's happened here to Richard Virenque, like a lot of older riders, they're not able to really get into the first couple of kilometres when the accelerations start from the men on the front of the main field. And what he's done, he's actually allowed himself to find his own rhythm, and then as the front end of the race has started to stabilise, he's actually ridden across the gap. He's pushing himself pretty hard here right now because he knows he wants to make contact just before they go over the summit. But Bob, very often an older rider improves throughout a long stage like this. If you've got the climbing ability as Richard Virenque has, it's the last thing that ever actually disappears if you're a great climber.
Well, he had a fabulous Tour de France, a little bit of redemption for his career, getting the yellow jersey and winning the stage into Morzine, and at the end of the race having again won the King of the Mountains for the 6th time, to tie Lucien Van Impe and Federico Bahamontes as the winningest King of the Mountain in all the tours. So obviously he's a great climber. It's odd to see him in the second group there with Eric Zabel. He's making amends of that right now, just catching on to the back end of the front group with all of our main contenders. It's a little bit discouraging to see a bunch of the postal riders back there in the second group. So we'll have to see if this doesn't come back together on the descent of the Peyresourde before the last 2 climbs of the day.
Well, Johan Brunel was saying this morning that he was very happy with the performances of the postal riders so far, especially Manuel Beltran, who he now believes has got the possibility of actually taking out the overall win at this bike race. But they're still in a very good situation. They have Roberto Heras and Manuel Beltran with a great chance of doing the 1-2 when they get to the big mountains. But he did have a lot of good things to say about Isidro Nozal, because I think everybody thought that was an outstanding performance yesterday. And Johan Brunel actually said, Phil, that Nozal saved the Vuelta for Once yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely right. And we'll see, because there's still a long fight here. There's 1 or 2 riders really fancying their chances now. Very fast tempo. There's the clock still running. Remember, over the top has gone Johan Horrocks. 2 big wins for him today, and he's still got 2 more chances to go, because this is a healthy time gap. As we watch the riders go up, I'll quickly give you the full 9 riders in that breakaway. We haven't done that yet. Joseph Joufre, Relax, Unai Echeverria, Euskaltel, Johan Horrocks, MSS, Francisco Lara from Team Bianchi, Joaquim Rodriguez of Once, Dennis Lungi of Alessio, Eladio Jimenez of Ernesto with his teammate Aitor Osa. Osa, by the way, best placed at 16 minutes 32 seconds, and Constantino Zabaya of Kelmate. They are the leaders. They're over the top. And now we're all on the way down to Luchon. I don't think the race is run yet by any means, not with the big climb of the Col de Portillon to come, and the real big climb, which will bring them up to the finishing line at Plat de Verret, which will complete today the 166 kilometres. They've got 71 to go in the bunch. And welcome back. We're looking at the riders now on the next big climb of the day, the Col de Portillon. And this will take them back into Spain. In fact, they've passed the customs post right at the bottom of the start of this climb. And they're still in pursuit of 9 riders who've been away over all of the mountains so far. The gap is round to 8 minutes. We're watching Lataza here, who was the first attacker, now dropping back along with his teammate Jose Enrique Gutierrez. So there is a little bit of, and there is Levi Leipheimer as well, sadly, also dropping back on the climb.
Well, this is a very difficult Pyrenean climb. You can see it's a very narrow road. It's the gateway into Spain right now, and this is the damage that the acceleration has done at the front end of the main field. The pressure is really on. A lot of work has been done by the La Barca team. They're trying to pull it all back together because of the presence of Jean Orach in that leading group. Because if he gets maximum points again at the top of this climb, Phil, he could bring himself very close to becoming the new leader in that competition, because it's really closing up on a day like today.
Well, not only is the pace hotting up right now as we run into the last 50 kilometres of the day, but also the King of the Mountains competition. Horach has won both of the big climbs. He's still in the breakaway, approximately 8 minutes ahead, and he is now running Felix Cardenas very, very close indeed. Another 16 points for the top of the Portillon. He'll have to still be in the lead, of course, by the end of the day to win the leadership of that. The Col de Portillon, then, the gateway back into Spain. This is the details. It's a 5-mile climb, 8 kilometres, and pretty much the same gradients as the one they've just come over the Peyresourde. But I think now, because they're closing in on the finish, the pressure is going to split this field up.
It's actually a much more difficult climb, though, even though the gradient is about the same. If you just look at the surface of the road there, it's that kind of surface that you get on a lot of these Pyrenean climbs. It's a very rough surface. You don't get the rolling effect of a nice smooth surface like the roads that we quite often see in places like Switzerland. Because here, Bob, this is the kind of road when it feels as if the bike is actually stuck to the road.
Well, they use the chip and seal pavement, I guess, to save money, but it's very hard to ride up, and riding down is a little bit more dangerous. The gravel tends to collect in the middle of the roads and on the side, so you have to really follow your line through the corners. Be very careful. I've come to grief a number of times in the Pyrenees because I wasn't that good of a climber, so I was trying to make up time on the descents, and it was always a sketchy situation. Kelme on the front of the group now. Alejandro Valverde is in 8th place. They'd love to have him move up a little bit. A pretty quiet Vuelta so far for the Kelme team. One of the most aggressive Spanish teams, one of the most aggressive teams in all of cycling, especially in the mountains. They have a rider in the breakaway, but I guess they feel like they want to get Valverde a little bit closer up, maybe provide a hard tempo, and he might be attacking on the last climb, which is a very, very hard finishing mountain all the way to the line in Pla de Beret.
Well, there were moments yesterday when Valverde was the race leader and he was looking forward to a golden jersey. It wasn't to be, as it worked out at the end. There's Cardenas, by the way, in that orange jersey. Third man in what is the premier group now of the race, because a lot of riders split up and dropped off. 2 riders disqualified, by the way, yesterday for holding on to cars in the mountains, and Valerie Tebaldi, one of the managers, was sent off the race completely for towing riders. So that is very, very interesting, and I think a just decision too by the race referees. 181 of 190 riders, in fact we've had one out, so there's 180 left now. 11 of the 22 teams are still intact.
Well, those 2 riders, Gerrit Glomser and David Frattini, and it was rather a surprise because Glomser is an excellent climber, but he seemed to have been under pressure the last couple of days, and let's not forget this year he was the winner of the Tour of Austria.
That's right.
Kelme, I think, inspired by the ride yesterday of Oscar Sevilla, and there were some newspaper photographs of the injury to his hip, that crash he had on the first day out on the open road, and it was a very traumatic hematoma which now seems to be healing up as we get further into the Vuelta a España. I think reflects the courage that Oscar Sevilla has shown, because over those first few days on the open road he really was suffering just to stay in contact with the main field.
Well, we're watching very steady tempo riding here now. The riders have ridden a very sensible race here today, because the breakaway going pretty early on. By the time they got to Bagnols, with an awful long way still to go, the breakaway was forming. 9 riders in the end getting together. Last man to reach the breakaway was Josep Jufre of Relax Fuenlabrada. He got across. Then it built up to a lead of 10:17. But they're not being silly, because tomorrow is a very, very difficult day.
On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side of the picture anyway, in the blue jersey, that is Luis Perez there. He's actually second in the combine competition. On the left-hand side, Bob, we can't say too much about the ability of the mountain biker Rasmussen, who did a superb ride yesterday. I thought it interesting that in the newspapers this morning he actually said that he felt it was the greatest moment in his cycling career, and after all, you know, the man has been a former world champion.
Well, he's been struggling on the road. He was going to do the Tour de France schedule to do that with the Rabobank team. He had a crash, broke his wrist just before the Tour, so couldn't do that. He was able to train, stay motivated while he wasn't racing, and he came to the Vuelta with great form, and he won a fabulous stage there. You can see the riders really struggling at the back of the main group that is chasing a breakaway of 9. Always found it discouraging when we would get to the bottom of the last 2 climbs on a big mountain day and a group had a 10 or 12-minute lead or 8 minutes like the first group has. Then the field really has to race hard, and there's absolutely no rest for the wicked at the back of this field.
Well, they've just gone past 5 kilometres still to climb as they were losing contact. Gonzalo Amorim is the rider there from MSS. Right behind him on telecom is Christian Werner. But when you're being dropped from the group, Paul, and you see 5 kilometres still to climb.
Well, I've been in that situation many times, so has Bob, and it really is a big blow to the morale. But at least it's 2 climbs to go, and you know that if you're still in contact with the main field now, that you're probably not going to get eliminated on a day like this. But the pressure that is being put on at the front end of the main field really is quite remarkable. There's Perez coming through now. He's second in the King of the Mountains competition. Manuel Beltran, tricky, riding very high in the overall classification, right on the wheel of the man who he's actually overtaken in the overall classification, Igor Gonzalez de Galdiano there in the yellow jersey. He really did blow a packet on the final climb of the day yesterday.
Yes, but I'm not sure exactly what form he's got, but he's living on his pure talent right now, and he's staying right up amongst the leaders, even though he is showing signs of cracking on these mountainous stages. But Gonzalez de Galdiano, still a lot of racing left, of course, as tomorrow's our second Sunday, 2 more Sundays to go, and 2 weeks of racing still to come. We'll take a break. And welcome back to the Tour of Spain. We're on the final kilometres now of the climb of the Col du Portillon, and under pressure it's Leonardo Piepoli and Osa who are now attacking on the front and again hurting the peloton. We're not getting too many pictures of the breakaway, but we still have 9 riders as far as we know intact, and they surely now in the last 1.5 kilometres of this climb.
They certainly are, but it's amazing to see the pressure that's coming on by ibernesto.com, because they have a man in the leading group, Aitor Osa, and it's rather surprising to see them doing this. And I wonder if it's anything to do with the rumours starting to emanate from the Vuelta a Espana that maybe Ibernesto have a replacement sponsor for next year. And that really would be good, because it's been a team that's been around for an awful long time. Sevilla in difficulty.
Oh, this is a shame, because he's really struggled around this tour. He came in with very few training kilometres because of injury all year. And then he had the bad luck to crash early on. And now, Bob, he's really struggling. He shows his class by just staying with these boys as long as possible, though.
He's just a few kilometers from the top of this climb, and if he can stay in contact, he can get back on the descent. He's a great pro. He's had some of the high hopes of Spain on his shoulders for a couple of seasons now, since he won the white jersey as best young rider in the Tour de France a couple of years ago. Here's a second moto down the road that looks like it might be Aitor Gonzalez, starting to find his legs now. He's taken over from Leonardo Piepoli at the front of the lead group. There's Luis Perez. Michael Rasmussen is having a great Vuelta.
Certainly is.
See, there's the king of the mountain, Felix Cardenas, there coming through, and that might be Valverde, the Kelme rider, that's in 8th place overall. And this is a gap right now. We'll see if it looks like Roberto Eras is coming across, but we don't see any of there's De Galdiano trying to make the juncture there, but the pace is on right now at the top of the Portillon. Very tough tempo. Heras taking a quick look back, perhaps looking for Beltran, perhaps looking for Isidro Nozal, the leader so far in the golden jersey, and we haven't seen him in the front. Big tempo now coming from Gonzalez and Luis Perez. Aitor Gonzalez still on the front. It's going to be very hard to follow him if he starts to find his form, and he is not out of this Vuelta a España by any stretch of the imagination. We have a long 53-kilometer flat time trial coming up in a week's time, and if he can stay close in the mountains, he's in the top 10 on GC, he could start to really close that gap, and he's starting to find his legs now. This is a good sign that Aitor Gonzalez is back on form in the Vuelta a España. It could not have come at a better time.
4 minutes is gap over Isidro Nozal, but Nozal under pressure today, and because the gap is being forced here and the golden jersey caught off guard. To gain good time over him, they're going to have to try an attack on this climb, because once down here we could drop down to Aubert and then we climb up towards the finish. This is the time to go.
It certainly is. It's a turn up for the books for Aitor Gonzalez, who certainly did not look like the man he was last year in the Vuelta a Espana, but that was a seriously good turn on the front. But look at this, Rasmussen has decided he wants to climb higher than his 9th place in the overall classification. This is a man who started his career as a mountain biker, and look at the damage it's doing at the back end of the group.
Well, I'm just wondering where on earth Beltran has gone here, because he is the man he's got to come across in this group, possibly with Heras. Here comes the Benesto tandem as well. They started the trouble. There's little Heras bridging the gap. Is that Beltran just behind him?
I think I saw Beltran actually at the back of the tail of this very long group of riders. He's been put under pressure today. He had a very good day yesterday. There's the leader of the King of the Mountains, Felix Cardenas. But right now, the race is really starting to blow to pieces. This is the top of the climb right now for the leaders.
Well, that was a quick switch. First time we've seen them on this climb, and they've gone over the top. We've cut to them just too late to see exactly who was causing first place. That's Unai Echeverria there doing a David Echeverria and stretching out his muscles as they start down. But I think Horich was not too far away from being first again there. So the clock will start as they start the climb. But I think the direction quite right here with the cameras watching the action amongst the race leaders on this climb. There is Heras off to the right. He's hooked up. Beltran seems to be in one of those go well one day, not so well the next day moods at the moment.
Well, you know, when you put the pressure on somebody's shoulders, as maybe the team manager did yesterday, Johan Brunel, saying that now I feel Beltran can win the Tour, I think he may well have just popped a little bit. There's also another rumour emanating in Spain right now that Once might have discovered a new sponsor for next year as well, and it's good to see that the two big teams might stay around. And this man is also, I think, probably going to take a lot of the pressure off the team Rabobank, who we've heard an awful lot in the press about the fact that the sponsor has not really been very happy with the performances. It's amazing in the sport of professional side, if you put a great performance in towards the end of the season, it can really wipe the slate clean and people forget all the bad times that happened earlier in the year.
Right, well, let's see if they can close. Remember, the clocks are counting now at the top of the climb, and this is the last climb before we climb up to the finish, which will take us to the end of the day. And don't forget that tonight at 8 p.m. it is PBR night again for you. And boy, riding a bull can be a really tough occasion and exciting television. So watch out and check out the action as we tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific go riding with some of the top cowboys in the world. Now that's Rasmussen very briefly there as we're looking at the field now, coming down to this elite little bunch of climbers. They change ever so slightly every day, don't they, Bob?
Absolutely. It's a Benesto team on the front now. That's Leonardo Piepoli, and it looked like Juan Miguel Mercado, or maybe it's Unai Osa chasing his brother who is in the breakaway. Benesto needs to salvage some solid results in the mountains here of this Vuelta a Espana. It hasn't been great for them so far, and I think today they have really put the pressure on two men in the breakaway, and now two men leading the lead riders. A lot of our big race, pre-race favorites and solid top guys in the top 10 have fallen away from this group. Roberto Heras is there. We haven't seen Del Galdiano. We haven't seen Beltran, and we haven't seen Isidro Nozal. Very select group now at the top of the Portillon. And here's the breakaway coming down the other side.
Well, they're in Spain right now because the frontier is right at the top of this climb, the Col du Portillon, so they're feeling very much back at home. It's a very tricky and dangerous descent, as are many of these Pyrenean descents, but the road surface looks a lot better than it was on the other side of the mountain, coming up to the summit of that very difficult Col du Portillon. And right now, the man who I think got maximum points was Jon Harach, and that will bring him within 5 points of the overall lead in the King of the Mountains. So there's going to be a huge race on this final climb of the day, because if Harach stays in the top 5 or 6 places at the end of the stage, he will take the lead away from Felix Cardenas. But it really is a magnificent day for racing today, and as we go back to the final kilometres, this man really has astounded me in the Tour of Spain so far. 9th overall, 4.5 minutes down, and he's cruising up to the summit of this climb.
He is having a fabulous time at Rasmussen right now after yesterday's big effort, and look at that, 3:39, and that has really shut down the breakaway. Now Horich has continued to close in on the King of the Mountains. Here comes the first portion of the peloton at 3:45. But Rasmussen making it look all very easy there, as if he's ready for another go when we climb up to the finish of the Plat de Beret. But first, of course, they've got to catch those 9 riders. But they have closed in dramatically because of the rapid acceleration there of that group of elite climbers with about 3 kilometres to go to the summit. Rasmussen on his way down. I don't think he'll try to outrun the rabbits. I think they'll all come alongside him, and a group of some 30 will be in pursuit of the leaders. We'll take a break. And welcome back. We're looking at the leaders now. They've just more or less completed the descent of the Col de Portillon, and soon after they came off onto the flatter roads and attacked by Johan Horek, the rider who was first over the top. And it's caused quite a little bit of dismay in the breakaway because he split the leaders at the minute. That's the situation after the climb. Cardenas still the King of the Mountains leader, but Horich now up into second place. He needs 5 points if he can stay away to the finish today, and he'll be the new leader there. Tough call, I think, because we've still got 30-odd kilometres to go. And there, for the first time for a long time today, Paul, we can see the race leader.
Isidro Nozal, the revelation yesterday, saved the race for Team Once, and he's still the leader of this bike race in the overall classification. They obviously have decided to have a bit of a truce before they get to the final climb of the day, because everybody's just sitting around looking to see what's going on. But I think, Bob, we are going to have a pretty serious battle, because Isidro Nozal and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano were put under pressure on that last climb.
They both look to be in a lot of trouble on that last climb of the Portillon, and that doesn't bode well for their chances on a very difficult climb to the finish of this bike race. Roberto Heras, for himself, didn't have any trouble matching the accelerations of Michael Rasmussen, and you've got to take our hats off to this man. He is having a great Vuelta a Espana. He had no trouble at all dropping everybody in the front of the bike race in the main group. They've come together a little bit. Some of the stragglers that were trying to stay in the front caught on the descent, and now there's been, like you said, a bit of a truce. They're just about 3.5 minutes behind the breakaway, which is at this point is starting to break up a little bit. Osa, Joufre, and Rodriguez and Orach were in the front there, but I don't think it's. This is the first category climb of the Portillon, the results of the King of the Mountain.
And 16 points for Horach, which means he's just 5 short now of taking the overall lead, but he's got to get points on the last climb of the day. Also there, we're looking at the whole composition of the first 9 riders. They went over the top, 10th place rather, went to Rasmussen at just over 3 minutes in the front half of the peloton, which has seemed to have called a truce, as Paul has said. It's time out before they have what we think will be one big showdown today. I think the riders have ridden a very sensible race because they know the big mountains tomorrow are going to hurt into Andorra, and today it's become a very internal battle. The best placed rider in the league group is Aitor Osa at just over 16.5 minutes, and it's unlikely they'll get that now by the finishing line. So the boys here are going to have an in battle, and may the best man take the leader's golden jersey at the finish.
Dario Frigo just going through there wearing number 3. This is the kind of finish today that would have suited a man like Dario Frigo. It's a kind of climb that you can use at sheer power, and I think everybody here is pretty happy because this has been a very hard stage as well, with the Col d'Aspin followed by the Col de Peressourde. I think many of them are a little surprised by the severity of the Col du Portillon, and maybe surprised by that man there, number 1, last year's winner, Aitor Gonzalez, who rode an absolutely superb tempo to put Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano and Isidro Nozal into a spot of bother on that climb. And he's got the advantage, as Bob said, in a couple of days' time. He's got a very long 50-kilometre time trial to put a big time gap between himself and the other climbers in this race.
Just looking on the far side there to see if that is Dario Frigo. There's somebody shot up on the inside there and has gone for it. Now, it could have been Richard Virenque, but he came back, remember, on the climb earlier. We saw him come back. Now, the sort of move he would make, the pace has dropped right down. He's not a marked man. And, of course, he's won in the Pyrenees on the other side before.
He certainly has. He's won up at Courtrai. That was back in 1995 on what was a very sad day for the Tour de France, because that was the day that Fabio Casatelli died on the descent of the Col de Porte d'Aspet. Richard Virenque did not know anything at all about it at the time, but certainly he has been a successful bike rider when it comes to the Pyrenean passes. And this was the right time to hit them, because all of the big leaders in the overall classification, they're just watching themselves right now. They'll battle over the final few kilometres, and somebody's come across here to try and join up with him.
Well, this is a Paternina rider who's trying to bridge the gap here. We'll catch up as soon as we can. And it looks to me as though that's possibly going to be Martinez, I think. Yes, Martinez. That'll be Jose Luis Martinez of the Patanina team. And this could be a very good move, because I do not believe it'll cause any reaction from the race leaders. There's no reason to chase these riders. And if these riders do reach those front riders on the climb, then Tricky Ricky, as we call him, may have played the move of the day.
It's a great move by him. He will look for a move like that. He's obviously not going to be marked at all. He was in difficulty on the Col de Peyrasourde, but that's the experience of a rider who is getting later on in years. He knows how his body's going to react, and he knows that his body will be better in the latter part of a very long and difficult stage like this one today.
And of course he spread the rumour this morning that he was feeling very tired, of course, which will have got back to all of the riders, and then he's taken advantage of that. He might have misled them completely. But a good move by Richard Virenque, because he's now gone clear and he's got help there from Martinez. But remember, there are still 9 in front. There's the attack, and we'll take a break. And as we rejoin the action here, just 20 kilometres from the finish, that of course is for the 9 leading riders. They did split up momentarily, but they're all back together again, and they are on just about the lower slopes now of the climb up the Plat de Beret for the finish of today's stage. The last time check we got, it was around about 3:45. I think it might have marginally gone up.
Well, they were messing around a little bit at the front, and it's all swinging back into the advantage now of Team Once. This is Isidro Nozal, the leader after 7 days, and he's still acting really very much, I think, as a domestique for Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, who most people really believe is the single leader of this team. But there we can get a picture of just exactly what's happening. There on the top left-hand side are the 9 leaders. They're about 4 minutes ahead of the 2 chasers there, Richard Virenque and Martinez. And then a little bit further back is the group of the golden jersey, Isidro Nozal. And they're all coming basically into the town of Vela, which is the bottom of this final climb of the day, the climb up to Plat de Beret, which is a whole hunking 20 kilometres of uphill climb.
It's going to be a tough finish. As you can see, the weather here in Spain is absolutely wonderful today. Nice clear blue skies, very, very autumnal, but a beautiful period of weather. These are the leaders now, all back together again. Horak did try to break them up, but they came back as they started to look at one another, seeing who was going to take up the chase. For this reason, we just received a time check, in fact, that the 2 riders we're looking at here are 5 minutes behind the breakaway. This is Virenque and Martinez, and about a minute ahead of the golden jersey group. Now, I wonder if Virenque can be inspired now, Bob, and get across to those leaders on this final climb.
This is a very tall order. He's left it maybe a little bit too late. I don't think he had the legs to go early in the breakaway because he was being dropped on the Peyrasourde. He came back to the leaders on the descent of that climb, and then he hung tough. The next climb, here we are in the valley before the last climb, and he's gone off the front, so he's seen every single group in the peloton today. He was behind the sprinters, passed them, dropped Eric Zabel, caught the leaders, went past the leaders. Now he's 5 minutes and 25 seconds behind the front group of 9 guys. A lot of infighting in the breakaway a little while ago on the Valley Roads, trying to split it up. Some riders perhaps not cooperating. And the group, however, of the golden jersey of Isidro Nozal under the escort of the Once team. And they're making just a very steady tempo before the last climb of the day.
Well, one thing's for sure, Paul, the main peloton isn't going to see that leading group again now, more than 7 minutes behind.
Absolutely. You can see Richard Virenque moving into second position here, and it's going to be a tall order for him to actually bridge that gap, unless, of course, we bear in mind that the leading group of 9 riders have actually been off the front for an awful long time. This is the golden jersey group of Isidro Nozal, and they're not too far behind. I think they may well catch up with the Virenque and Martinez group.
So the peloton in fighting taking part today, because nobody ahead is within 16.5 minutes of the race lead, so they should catch up. Now, if you manage to miss any stage of the Vuelta, and we certainly hope you don't, but you can always catch up with us on Summer Sports Zone, which comes to you every Thursday night. Not just the Vuelta, of course, news and results from the domestic and the international road racing scene, and of course we include mountain biking in that. You can check us out every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. That's Summer Sports Zone. This is the peloton, Viela, coming through now, knowing that the only way out of this town is uphill to the finishing line. Just over 22 kilometres to go for this rider, for this peloton rather. And at the end of it all, Paul, it's become all rather a pleasant sort of day for Once. They've recovered from the problems of the big climbs. Nobody really put them under too much pressure. Now, this climb, as you can see, is just under 22 kilometres. It starts right here in the town and climbs steadily from 1,020 metres. It climbs 3,500 feet to 2,020 metres.
It's a very long climb. As you can see, the average gradient of the climb is not really all that much, just over 4%. In fact, it's only around about 6.5% at its maximum. But I tell you one thing, it's the length, the 21-kilometre length, which takes the race up to 1,920 metres, which is not far off 6,000 feet. Which really makes this climb quite that difficult. And I'm sure we will get a lot more attacks. It's the kind of climb that would suit riders like Dario Frigo and Aitor Gonzalez, who are not pure climbers, but certainly very strong bike riders. And I wonder if everybody in this group here right now has noticed the difficulty that Isidro Nozal and, of course, Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano went through on the Col de Portillon.
Well, it's crunch time now because the leaders of the Vuelta Espana know that they will be placed under pressure here. The question is, who is feeling good and who is feeling a little bit shaky? Because the in-battle begins in this very elite chase group of some 30 riders, and whoever gets up there best could well be the next wearer of the leader's yellow jersey. Beltran and Heras are going to have to take on this man, Isidro Nozal. We'll take a break. And welcome back. Moments ago, the first attack on the slopes up towards the finish. 11 kilometres for the leaders, but these boys are a fair way back now, over 7.5 minutes. Now, Carlos Sastre has just decided to open up the battlegrounds from the peloton. Let me quickly update you at the front, because one rider was dropped from the front, Francisco Lara from the Team Bianchi. He's been picked up now by Martinez and Veronk, but they're not closing in on the remaining 8 leaders. So I think they will fight out the finish today, and the in-battle continues here.
I'm sure we'll have a battle in this group because certainly it might not be the most difficult climb of the Vuelta a España, but every opportunity of an uphill finish is an opportunity that riders like Roberto Heras and Manuel Beltran have to take. Good move by Sastre. He actually lost a bit of time yesterday on the run-up towards the finish, but he's the first man to start the aggression here in the group that we're looking at the moment, the group of Isidro Nozal and Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, the Once leaders.
Now, as we look down here at a very select group, a lot did come back, of course, on the descent of the Col de Portillon, and one of those was Gonzalez de Galdeano. But they're all in there now, trying to save a little bit of energy for the third heavy day in the Pyrenees tomorrow, and probably the hardest of all 3 days. Bob, the breakaway, I don't think is going to get pulled back now. So for the benefit of those people who want to go out, tell us who's going to win.
You thought it might be Zavalla.
I think Zavalla, he deserves a success, put
absolutely.
It that way. Yeah.
I'm going to have to go with you, Phil, on this one.
No. That's Zavalla's got no chance now for him.
The Benesto riders look very strong as well.
From a group of 8 riders who are left, it's difficult to pick a man because they've all been through all kinds of purgatory this afternoon. They're almost certainly going to survive because in the main field, what Once will try and do is just nullify any attacks to their 2 leaders, Gonzalez de Galdeano and, of course, Isidro Nozal, who hopes he's going to keep hold of the overall lead for another day. The time gap to the leaders right now, 6.5 minutes, so they're a long way off with around about 13 kilometres to go to the finishing line.
Well, that's the sprint point there, down at Saladou, where the sprint was won by Echeverria in the breakaway from Jufra and Jimenez. They're not sprints which really attract any great deal because there's no time bonuses there. That's the 13k point just there, but we're going back up here to 10k now for the leaders, so that's given us a pretty accurate gap between the leaders and that main chasing bunch. In between, we've got Veronk, Martinez and Francesco Lara, who seems to have found his second win because he's got into them pretty easily. But they're going to be caught in no man's land now. This is a perfect day for the golden jersey. He's got a 55-second buffer. And here's Lara now. It looks as though Lara is beginning to sag a little bit now with the relentless tempo of the other 2. As Paul has said, this isn't one of the outstanding climbs. I think, what is it, the 3rd time, Paul, that we finished the stage up here?
The 3rd time that we've been here, and I'll tell you one thing, the weather conditions are a lot better than they were when the race came here back in 1991. Because on that occasion it was actually cancelled. But now you can see the attacks are starting to come thick and fast.
Echeverria there, the winner a few days ago now, has suddenly cracked there. That is a surprise. And it looks as though we shouldn't have mentioned Constantino Zabaya, Bob, because he's also cracking here under the strain. This is Eladio Jimenez.
There's Eladio Jimenez from the Benesto team. 2 riders on that team in the breakaway. Eladio Jimenez as well as Aitor Gonzalez.
Yep.
Zabaya is fighting back with Denny Lungi on his wheel, but right back up here in the front, if we can get back up to the leaders, we can see who's making the hard tempo. There's Varenk and Martinez. They're a long ways down the mountain, probably a couple of kilometers behind the riders at the front of the bike race. The mountain does level out at the top, so we might have a totally different composition of contenders once we get over the steep slopes in the middle section of the climb. And it would be like a guy like Denny Lungi. If he can limit his damages and stay close to the climbers on this big mountain, he would have a very good chance to win the sprint, as it does flatten out 2 or 3 kilometers before the finish line.
Well, that's Lungi nearest, and just coming off our picture there is Horac, and I think that he is... he's obviously going to be the new leader of the King of the Mountains now, Paul, wherever he finishes in this breakaway, but I think he might still look at a stage win too.
Well, he'll look at that as long as he finishes inside the top 8, and right now he's looking at a top 4 position. He will be the new King of the Mountains leader tonight. But looking at the race composition, the breakaway, which is slimming down to 4 riders, is almost 5 minutes ahead of Richard Virenque. There will be an acceleration in that group there, and my favourite, Denny Lungi, has just been popped off the back there by another acceleration from, in fact, Jon Harac, the man there in the lime green jersey, and he's in fact putting the hammer down pretty hard.
He has had one inspired day of riding today. He's done what Richard Virenque has done in the Tour de France in the past. He has conquered all of the mountains in first place. The Espana, the Perosord, and there's another attack from Jimenez there, and Portillon. He's gone over the top 3. Now, here we have Cardenas here now setting the pace. It's all too late. He might crack 1 or 2 riders at the tail of this elite bunch of riders, but there's no way now they're going to bridge 6 minutes and 38 seconds to those men up front.
Well, there was a counter-attack there, the blue jersey. That's Luis Perez. He was also a former leader of the King of the Mountains competition. If I was Felix Cardenas right now, I'd just forget about it for today. He's probably going to lose the lead in the King of the Mountains jersey, but tomorrow is another day in the big mountains of the Pyrenees as we head across towards Andorra. Reaction there at the bottom. It looks as if it is Cardenas trying to come across.
Yep.
Race situation right now. So the top left-hand corner, you've got Eladio Jimenez, who's the lone leader, has the advantage of having Aitor Oza in the group behind, so they won't chase. Virenque Martinez, they're around about 5 minutes behind, but at the front end of the main field, there's a certain acceleration coming. There is Luis Perez. This is Felix Cardenas. But I think, Bob, the big contenders, they're just going to keep a very close eye on each other now.
And I believe that Carlos Sastre is up ahead of Luis Perez and Felix Cardenas. That's a good little breakaway to be in. Here comes a Benesto rider. They've been very active today all over the front of the bike race. That might be Unai Osa, the brother of Aitor Osa, who's up the road, defending the chances right now of Eladio Jimenez, who is way up the mountain ahead of everybody at the moment. But it is all changed right now on the Vuelta a Espana. Like we were saying before, it comes down not just to tactics, but also the strength that's left in the legs. A long breakaway, lots of mountain climbs. So it is anybody's ball game up at the top of the front of the bike race. You can absolutely not overbake your effort. You have to meter it out perfectly and do perfect timing. Jimenez seems to have the advantage right now.
Big effort then by Unai. Brother Aitor is still up in front of him and best placed in that breakaway to make the big ascension of the overall classification. Could halve his deficit if things work out, but the breakaway has now split up. It is Jimenez, Eladio Jimenez, who's setting the pace at the front. These 3 are clear, but there's no way they're going to catch up with the leaders of the day. We'll take another break. And welcome back with about 5 kilometres to go, slightly more. In fact, there's a 5 kilometre banner for the 2 leaders, as we're now seeing Rodriguez and Aitor Osa going for the win on the day. Osa, remember, is the best placed in what was a 9-man breakaway, and frankly is now spread right down this mountain. A chase group has wiped out Virenque and Castra and Martinez, and it's a very select group of 4 here. Second man there who came up at a tremendous speed is Rasmussen, the winner yesterday, Perez, Cardenas and Unai Osa, and this is a very solid group. The last check we got, Paul, they were still 4 minutes back.
Yeah, but I think the man doing the great operation is the man in 4th position there, Felix Cardenas, the leader of the King of the Mountains competition. And the effort that he's putting on there, I might have a feeling that he's going to catch Horac before the top of this climb. There, though, is the main field with all of the big leaders. And I tell you what, Once today have turned the books around completely. They are in complete control. There in 2nd position, there's Igor Gonzalez de Galliano. Heras is in this group as well. In 3rd position there is Manuel Beltran. He's looking pretty comfortable, and I think maybe today he'll think about just taking a back seat for a while, because again we face up to a very difficult race tomorrow. Aitor Osa and Joaquim Rodriguez are 4:43 ahead of the chasers, and the chasers are still holding on to a 29-second advantage over the group of the leader. Let's not forget, Isidro Nozal is still leading this bike race. He's in that group as well.
Well, 2 leaders at 4:43. That's exactly the same. So the 6 riders behind are not, 4 riders rather, are not closing in on the leaders. But the golden jersey has closed down 6 seconds on those 4 riders. So they haven't given up yet. It is going to be a duo battle now all of the way to the summit. Now, Cardenas could save his King of the Mountains jersey here if he can pick off a few riders from that breakaway on the way up. It's quite a good battle now, Bob, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a great battle. Horac knows that he needs to maintain a position probably in the top 5 and hope that Cardenas doesn't start picking up riders that have been dropped. Already Lara has been dropped and shelled by this group, so Cardenas is inching closer to some more points for the King of the Mountain, and he's really making a hard tempo in that little group with Luis Perez, Michael Rasmussen.
The most impressive man of the day, though, in fact these 2 days, is Michael Rasmussen, because the speed he came across to catch up with those leaders was superb.
Absolutely brilliant climbing, and it just goes to prove that there is a crossover, isn't there, between mountain bike racing and the top end of the sport of road racing, because I think the best example was Cadel Evans last year leading the Giro d'Italia. This year, this man Rasmussen has really saved the season, I feel, for Rabobank.
And don't forget the Once team as we go under the next banner here for the 2 leagues. That'll be 6 to go, or 4 kilometres to go. We've seen the 5, haven't we? Osa in the front is going for a higher place on GC. I suspect, though, that the Once rider Rodriguez, already the leader of this race for 2 days. Now, I must confess, Bob, I thought that would have been the last we'd seen of him. Got himself into a move today which has really kept the Once flag flying.
Well, he wasn't obliged to work it all throughout this very long breakaway of 9 riders from the very first climb of the day, way back in the Col d'Espana. Because his team is still leading the bike race, he could just sit on the brake. He countered the attack of Aitor Osa, and now he's just sitting on Osa. He is in a really good position to win the stage, and that would be a great result for Once. We'll have to see what happens. They are in really, really solid control of this bike race. Back down the mountain, that's Igor Gonzalez de Galliano on the wheel of his teammate from Once, and Isidro Nozal, incredibly, is still in this group, also hanging absolutely tough like a cat on a hot tin roof. He does not want to get shaken out of this group. He needs to conserve 55 seconds from the man just down the line there, Manuel Beltran, if he's going to keep this jersey for another day, and it wouldn't surprise me if he could do it. He looks to be quite comfortable right here in this group, about 10 riders back.
A couple of riders actually starting to warm up as the Vuelta continues. Is the man you can just see there in the white jersey, Aitor Gonzalez. He's looked very good over the last couple of days, and in fact I think he's moving up to pick up the pace because he's not too happy with the speed.
Well, this is a good move, and Gonzalez has become more prominent. We might see a very good second half to the Vuelta from the man who won it a year ago, and that would give him great confidence because he had a rather flat season.
And look at the man on his wheel, Roberto Heras in person. He's moved up. He could see the danger. This, as I said earlier, is the kind of climb that suits Aitor Gonzalez, and he really wants to try and put the hammer down, but I think he's seen that he's not going to get the gap right now, and they're going to relinquish the reins of control back to Team Once in the yellow jerseys.
Well, this is going to be the day that the second echelon of climbers have pulled one over on the stars of the Vuelta. There's no doubt about that. They went early, they've stayed away, and they're going to win the day. While the big men who are planning on a victory in Madrid in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks and 1 day that is, they have watched each other today and they have struggled. Now, is that Oscar Sevilla there trying to bridge back up? Because he's had a real rough day, but this man has applied himself and will not give up. He's coming back, I think.
Well, he's trying to get himself back to this group here right now, but as they come around the corner, they're picking up the pace once again to accelerate as they come up to around about 7 kilometres to the finish. The leaders have gone through 4 kilometres to the finish, so certainly the victory on today's stage will either go to Aitor Osa or look at this. This is the man who won the Vuelta a Espana last year. He's got the power for this slightly easier incline, Bob.
It's an absolutely vicious acceleration. He's going to have to brake, actually, for this corner right here, right up on the camera motorcycle there, right in the midst of him. He attacked so hard that it was Roberto Eras barely able to respond, and he has absolutely detonated the Once train at the front. You can see Isidro Nozal trying desperately to close the gap. That was an incredible acceleration by Aitor Gonzalez, back on form after a really hard year so far, but he looked to be very strong on the previous climb, and now you can tell that he's really putting in some time. Roberto Eras there is just right on his wheel, in perfect position, looking back to see what kind of damage they've done, and I think that they will see that they've done quite a bit of damage.
I think they hurt him there. That was Santos Gonzalez, also got on terms with them, but he's not going to go and help out just now. That's Jose Acevedo there slipping away, caught on the whip end of the attack there. A sensational move by Gonzalez, and I think that has indicated to us that this man is starting to feel like his old self again.
This is Beltran in difficulty as well. That was an unbelievable acceleration, and I think what I'd like to see is the position of the golden jersey. I think he's in that group just a little further up. Now this is a surprise because Beltran looked like a solid leader yesterday. There is the golden jersey. This is the man who led the bike race at the start of today, and everybody's being put under serious pressure, and it's going to be a very complicated overall classification to work out here this afternoon. There's Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano put on the defensive.
Well, two big names in trouble, but then so is Beltran. So the top three riders are now finding that other men are beginning now to take part. So they're up over the top of what is the King of the Mountains climb as we now begin a slightly plateau as we race on towards the end. These are the two leaders. I think they're going to stay away to the end. We'll have to ask ourselves which one will win. We'll be back. And welcome back as we look at the mosaic here with the two leaders in the top left-hand corner are 800 metres now from the line, and Osa has got himself into the back position. This man has tried to rip the main contenders apart. We briefly saw him there, but you can see the golden jersey has rejoined with a struggle, but not in this group is Manuel Beltran. So at the end of this day, Nozal could be doing himself a big favour. But first of all, credit where credit is due, because this is Rodriguez at the front, no doubt normally the better sprinter of the two, but I'm not sure now because Aitor Osa has got the driving position as they approach the line. There's a slight downhill here as they come up to the line. Osa is going to wait till the last minute. He's the highest placed in the original breakaway, but still 16:32 behind. Rodriguez goes to try and finish it off for a great day for Once yet again here, but I'm not sure now because Osa is going to have to try and give it his best shot. Rodriguez hasn't won a stage since Paris-Nice. Now he has this year, his second win of the year, and that keeps the Once flag flying.
Well, that was a great move by him. Tactically, he was in the strongest position, but seriously, this has been an unbelievable showdown on the slopes of this very difficult mountain. A 20-kilometer climb right now. This is the next group on the road. This is the group of Horac. Horac is in there with Zabaya, and on the right-hand side there is Joufre from Relax. He's done a great ride this afternoon.
But this could be the King of the Mountains jersey for Johan Horac here. It would be great if he could win the sprint for his own benefit. It would give him more points, but we'll see as he comes up towards the line now. As Zabaya has got the lead here, and he is a very good sprinter, and he's got the benefit of the bend. As he comes around the corner, I think he's taken it all too much out of them here. Joufre has also challenged on every mountaintop today, but not this one. As Zabaya just gets it on the line, almost got pipped there by Joufre and Horac.
Well, Horac will get himself 12 points there, and I think that's enough to give him the lead in the overall classification. A little bit sketchy there. It looked as if this man was going to go the wrong way as well, because on the run up towards the finish, it's rather a shame to have a left-hand bend just before the finishing line.
So Unai Echeverria comes in. I make him in 6th place. So remember, there were 9 men away originally. I think the rest might have been swept up. As no one rider is just about holding off here. This will be Lungi, and he will be 7th of the 9-man breakaway. I think the others will have been swept up. But Denny Lungi, he gets 7th place on the day.
The most important thing right now, though, is to see the time gaps that open up between all of the different groups. And in fact, one of the other survivors is coming through here as well, because this is Eladio Jimenez. He will hold on just for 8th place. So after that, we should see the arrival coming out of the slopes of this climb of the group containing Luis Perez and, of course, the man who leads the overall King of the Mountains at the start of the day, and that was Felix Cardenas.
Well, Cardenas has got to be in the mix somewhere as they continue now to run in to the line. This has been quite an amazing battle over the last few kilometres as the stars of the tour so far have taken themselves on. Look at the time gaps. They don't mean anything as far as the destiny of the golden jersey goes today, because here he is in what is a very elite group. It looks as though while our cameras have been away, though, this group really has thinned down a little bit, Bob.
Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano tacked on at the back there. It's kind of odd to see Once's best man so far in this Vuelta a España doing all the tempo, but they have put some time in between themselves and Manuel Beltran, and so that's why you see Isidro Nozal really making a strong tempo, also to protect the interests of Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. In this group, also Aitor Gonzalez and Roberto Eras, but we haven't seen Manuel Beltran.
Well, there was only 26 seconds between Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano and Manuel Beltran at the start of the day, and I think we might see that gap actually being extended when we come up to the finish line. That would replace the Once riders in first and second position. But once again, Isidro Nozal has turned out to be the most stunning domestique. Riders at the Tour de France like Victor Hugo Peña were criticised for wearing the leader's jersey and riding as a domestique for Lance Armstrong, but exactly the same thing is happening here right now. Isidro Nozal doesn't believe that he can win this race overall. This is the sprint now, Phil, for 8th place coming up, and round the corner there, Rasmussen.
Yesterday's winner still putting in a tremendous ride here, Michael Rasmussen. He had the best legs to catch this group, and he comes to the line easily. He takes the 9th place finish, I think it is, as they cross the line now. And here comes the golden jersey. Not a big gain. None of the men in front worrying him at all, and he's actually gaining time over his nearest rival Beltran on the day. He's turned yet another day around his way. This man is becoming quite a remarkable bike rider. Even wins the sprint.
He even wins the sprint, and he still does not believe in himself. He still thinks that the man who's going to win the race for them is Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. Here is Beltran right now coming up. He has 26 seconds if he wants to keep himself in second place in the overall classification, and I'm rather surprised to see after his performance yesterday that he was put into difficulty today on what is a slightly easier finishing climb.
Well, he's got about 5 seconds now to get to the line, if that calculation proves correct, and it looks to me as though he might well have lost that place now to Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano. It's ticked by just a few seconds. He's fought, he's failed, and he goes down to 3rd place overall. But of course, tomorrow is another vicious day in the mountains. It just shows you how the legs are variable on this final climb today. Some great form by some riders and questionable form by others. Richard Virenque in the summer of the Tour de France was streaking over the mountains. Today he got wiped out and put back into the rear of the peloton. No doubt who the winner was, though, Joaquim Rodriguez. He didn't win the other day when he got the leader's yellow jersey for 2 days. He certainly got the pleasure of saying he's now had the golden jersey and the stage win in the Vuelta, his first ever stage win. And that is little Oscar Sevilla coming in there, 5 minutes and 8 seconds down on the men that matter.
Like Inigo Cuesta, who came in with him as well. But what a remarkable recovery for this man. He's going to have a very difficult time riding to the top end of the overall classification. But once again, the gaps are starting to appear, and still, I have to say, Phil, there is no idea on my mind who is going to be the overall winner of this bike race. It's still a complete suspense.
Well, absolutely right. Certainly won't be this man, because after he'd relinquished his orange jersey, or his golden jersey, he lost far too much time in the time trial. But he's having a wonderful tour, and Once keep pulling it out of the bag. And now 5 days in the golden jersey for Isidro Nozal. So that's the results. We're just going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have the presentations and analyse what exactly is going on in what is turning out to be a great Vuelta Espana with 2 weeks to go. And welcome back. So the 8th day of the Vuelta Espana is over. A 2-man sprint at the top of the Pla de Beret, and a victory for Joaquim Rodriguez. Here he is, just out sprinting Aitor Oza. Pretty easy sprint for him, a very strong one. Only his 2nd win of the year and his 3rd in his career. But he's on the ascendancy as a young cycling star. There's the result confirmed. Same time for Osa. Then came Constantino Zabaya, 51 seconds. All of these rides, of course, part of virtually the race-long breakaway. Johan Horak there taking the 5th place at 54 seconds, enough to give him the lead in the King of the Mountains competition. Rasmussen getting across to the chase group, riding very well, gaining a few seconds over the race leader, Isidro Nozal. Igor Gonzalez de Galdeano, they all finished in the same group with Roberto Heras, and a very, very good Aitor Gonzalez today, who came over the line in 17th place at 3 minutes 51. But this man did lose time, Manuel Beltran. He's now a little bit further back. It's cost him his second place overall, at least for the moment. That last sprint up the mountain proving just one sprint too far for him. But I think he's much better on the longer climbs, and he should recover that. In the King of the Mountains competition, our first change in any competition for a few days now, Juan Horash has got just 1 point to the good over Felix Cardenas of the La Barca team. Aitor Osa also coming in now to third place, and Luis Perez, who in the opening days of this race was the King of the Mountains leader. And Joufre there had a wonderful day as well, scoring regularly on the tops of the mountains. In the Pacific Life general classification, 5 days in the golden jersey now for Nozal. A minute 21. A familiar scene this over his on-site teammate Gonzalez de Galdeano. Beltran slipping back by only a few seconds into third. Frigo holding at the same time gap he had this morning, 3:07, and the same for Roberto Heras at 3:18. He is now in fifth place. I think we can look a bit further down. There we are, Francisco Mancebo. None of these riders gaining any time today. Aitor Gonzalez at 4 minutes. Alejandro Valverde is in 8th place. Michael Rasmussen gained a few seconds by that late escape, and he's at 4:04 now, and Unai Oza also creeping in to the top 10 at 4:14. These guys all enjoying the tour at the moment, and tomorrow could do exceptionally well. 5 days, as I say now, for this rider. Deserves every golden jersey he gets. He's been under pressure every day. He's come fighting back. He's having a job holding the weight of that little trophy there. It's a solid piece of glass. But he is looking a very, very mature bike rider these last 5 days. And I think that tomorrow, on the tough roads, he is going to find that he might well deliver the goods as well. Well, the map tomorrow, it doesn't make pleasant viewing for the riders who can't climb, because this is a toughie. We say goodbye to our brief visit back into Spain, back over the old Pyrenees again, this time going to Andorra. And the last climb is the Porta Gonvalera, and the forecast, the temperature at the summit is expected to be only about 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Tomorrow, same day coverage. Don't forget, 3 o'clock. We begin till 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're on that road of 174.8 kilometres. Now, Andorra is a very, very popular finish for the big tours, like the Tour of Spain and the Tour de France, and very often it's the road which plots the route for the final winner of the event. Might be a little bit early to predict who is going to win this year's Vuelta Espana, because we still have 2 very full weeks to go. And don't forget, Bob Roll and Paul Sherwen and myself are all sending our little messages to the website, so come and visit us online at olntv.com, and that's where you find out too about all of the coverage of cycling on OLN television. So the race goes on. 2 wonderful days of racing in the Pyrenees beneath blue skies, and it could change tomorrow, because there's a cold day threatening on top of the final climb of the day.